influencing popular culture, politics, and everything in between. The local station takes you ringside as we discuss the crazy world that is professional wrestling. This is Going Ringside with the local station.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Going Ringside. I'm your host, Scott Johnson. Episode 94, if you're counting. Last week, go check out Grayson Waller with WWE. Just pretty much insulted the planet. You don't want to miss episode 93. It was great last week. And this week, we got another star-studded episode for you. Our first guest, going to be coming up in a little bit. You know him better as Jack Swagger, maybe back in WWE, or Jake Hager, his real name in AEW, an MMA success. Jake Hager is joining us. He'll be our leadoff guest in just a little bit. And a little later on, that guy, you might remember him from his WWE run. He was in SmackDown, he was in NXT. Went by Reggie. Today he goes by Sydney Bateman on the Indies. He held that WWE 24/7 title for quite a while. He'll be joining us. And in between these two, a must-see interview if you live in Florida or live anywhere near Florida where we're at. That would be the Florida Man Games. I don't know if you've heard about them. It's just unreal. You have to see what this is about. It is essentially, we were trying to determine how to call these people who participate in the Florida Man Games. I kind of came up with swamp people. Who knows? But it is definitely a one-of-a-kind event. You want to hear all about it. Florida Man Games coming up. We'll have the organizer right after this interview with Jake Hager. Jake Hager, formerly Jack Swagger in WWE. Jake Hager's his real name, has been a guy who has excelled at everything. He has been a superstar since day one in childhood. Amateur wrestling, just a stud. When he arrived in WWE, he's one of those guys, kind of like a Kurt Angle or a Brock Lesnar. He comes in, and you don't really need to teach. He is a beast in the ring because he knows all how to do it. He was an amateur standout. He's going to talk about that translation from pro wrestling into MMA, where, as far as I know, he's undefeated. Jake Hager has been a stud in pro wrestling for almost 20 years now. So we had a chance to catch up with him. So excited to talk to the guy who, as you can see, is kind of a giant among men. And we talked to him about another giant facing off with Paul White, a.k.a. The Big Show back in the day. We're going to have a conversation about that. So let's get to it. Here's our first guest on this episode. Here is Jake Hager. We're excited to be joined now by Jake Hager. Jake, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Jeez, thanks for having me.
So talk to me about how you've been doing. You have been kind of all over the place for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
I want to start back in your WWE run, Jack Swagger. How did the name Jake Hager's the real name, is that correct? How did the name Jack Swagger come about?
I've been very blessed in my wrestling career, so I'm very grateful to still be doing it and the body's still intact. Jack Swagger came about because I smiled at Vince and he said, "Man, I hate that smile." And so I immediately wiped it off my face and he's like, no, keep doing it. It's going to piss everyone off. And I kind of had some wild hair then, and I had a little bit of a reputation with the ladies.
Okay.
And so the next day, I was told that I was Jack Swagger from Vince himself.
So the Jack Swagger All-American gimmick, it just took off for you. Like, you were the main guy, you were the main heel for quite a long time.
I just had someone told me that they hated me so much as a kid. I was like, great, I was doing my job.
Yeah.
Lucky, I had friends in the company, and they saw the potential in what I could become. I was very green to wrestling, even in 2009 when I was doing my All-American gimmick. Had great people to work with, Hall of Famers, Tommy Dreamer, Fit Finley, Christian, Matt Hardy, just like guys that could take me into a ring, and we could have a 5-star match, and I could listen with
now,
them.
Your amateur wrestling was all legit, right? All pre. So was there as much of a learning curve for you, or did you kind of pick it up real quick?
The technique, there was no learning curve. I was right there. It was pretty much the same thing we were doing in practice in college. I always compare pro wrestling to amateur wrestling practice because we got to give our opponent a look so they can do the takedown correctly, so they can do the headlock correctly.
Yeah.
And you're dancing with them the same when you're doing pro wrestling. So that part was easy. Being vulnerable and becoming a character, that was the hard part. amateur wrestlers you don't want to lose. So now I come into the entertainment world, and I have to be vulnerable and, on camera, and I'm like, oh, I don't like that. So you got to loosen up a little bit and understand, all the moves are great. Like, I love Kurt Angle, but without the Kurt Angle character, you're not going to care as much. I feel like the character is really the important part of pro wrestling.
One of the feuds I remember for you a lot was Paul White, the Big Show.
Yep.
What was it like to work with Big Show? I mean, he's such a massive man. And you're a big guy, but to know that someone's, much bigger.
It was so much fun. Learned a lot. You work, small guys, you got to work differently. You work a giant, you got to work differently. I blew out his knee. I kicked him right in the knee, and he had to have surgery. So he still, to this day, will break my balls about that.
Really?
But in a good way. He's a great guy. I still remember the first time we did the choke slam counter into the ankle lock. He's such an athlete. Just like another great person that I've been fortunate enough to work with.
Would it hurt more with him as opposed to wrestling a regular sized guy?
Oh yeah. I can remember one time on the outside, it was a brawl, and I'm supposed to take the punch, and he really got me. I mean, it looked great, so at least that was good. But he really got me with the punch, and it wasn't like even 50% of his power. He just connected. I was like, okay.
Now you have eventually the gimmick where you're working. They bring in a manager for you.
Yeah.
What was it like working with him?
I'll put working with Dirty Dutch, Mantell, Zeb Coulter up there with winning the world heavyweight title. It was that important to me in my career.
Because he was such an old school legend.
I mean, he's done it all. 50 years in this business.
Yeah.
50 years promoting talent, behind the scenes booking. It's like unbelievable what he has told me. Like his stories. He's so smart. He doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's a very good friend of mine. He lives in Tampa now, but just a legend. I remember the first show we had, he was like, all right, Jack, let's go, because we were on first, and we got done, and I was like, well, they kind of want us to wait around, and he's like, Jack, you're going to learn more with me in 5 minutes riding down this road than watching any of these guys wrestle a match. I'm like, I'll grab my bag,
And
sir.
that was accurate.
Yeah, and it wasn't that polite either.
So eventually you make the WWE jump, and eventually you wind up in AEW, but there was a gap between the two, wasn't there?
Yep. I went into professional MMA. The whole idea was to use my television history to be a bigger name in MMA, and then get paid more, and then also become a bigger star in wrestling.
Have you ever lost in MMA?
Nope, undefeated.
That's what I wanted to ask about. So we've seen others like,
That's what I look like? That's some scary shit.
We've seen others like Brock.
4-0, about to be 5-0.
Yeah, so talk to me about this. So it's been easy. It's been an easy
Okay,
for you.
so in 2017, I left WWE. I'm very proud of this. For the next 12 months, I'm grinding my ass off.
Yeah.
I only know amateur wrestling. I don't know how to box. I don't know how to kickbox. I don't know how to do jiu-jitsu. I know nothing about defense. I know nothing about cage wrestling. So Monday through Friday, I'm doing practice every day. Like each day a different one, conditioning, puking my guts up. And then on the weekends, I'm going to wrestle independents to pay the bills. So it was like a non-stop back and forth, going to Cincinnati to train with my boxing coach there, and then going to wrestle at WrestleCon in New Orleans. It's just so many things that we had to go through, but it really I feel like it saved my life. It got me back to who I was, and allowed me to remember that, and very fortunate about it.
What paid off more in MMA? Was it the pro wrestling or was it the amateur skills you had?
You know what? I said because of my live television experience, I felt very confident going into MMA. I feel like if you could do live TV, you could almost do anything,
Well, speaking of live TV, so eventually you go to AEW.
Yeah.
Brand new company under the Khan family, which I work with a lot. What was it like going into AEW?
It was awesome. Chris Jericho is the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. For him to bring me in and say I'm his guy, I mean, what a compliment. Tony didn't want me there, but Chris said he wanted me there, and it was awesome. And working with the Inner Circle is one of my favorite things. Working with the Jericho Appreciation Society, one of my favorite things. I can't say it, but one of my favorite moments of my career, this stadium stampedes that we did. Just good times. Daly's place during the pandemic.
Yeah, what was that like? Because we dealt with that a lot in Jacksonville. You guys were pretty much had to almost move to Jacksonville for a while.
It was a second home for real.
Were you guys happy that you still had a place to work at that point? Because a lot of places just couldn't do anything.
Absolutely. Very, very fortunate. And I think Daly's Place is a great wrestling arena. Great place to hold a wrestling show. Yeah. It's really cool. It's intimate. And those days were special. I can remember when we finally were allowed to have crowds again. And I was in tears going out there because it was just like, thank God we're back.
Well, Jake Hager, Jack Swagger, also known as, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Sorry, I got all this money in my pocket.
And you have a fight coming up?
I'm retired from
on MMA.
From MMA.
Okay, just making sure. Okay.
I got a pig in the 4-H contest, and I plan on winning that blue ribbon. Though.
That's all you need. That's all you need. That's a step up from wrestling. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, guys.
Wrestling champ, MMA, pig in the 4-H. What more does a man need to accomplish? I want to shift gears right now and thank Jake for coming on. That was a great interview. So happy to catch up with him. Talk to you a little about the Florida Man Games. So if you live in Florida, you've heard about it a lot. If you live outside of Florida, you've heard the stereotype of Florida man, the trashy guy who gets into all sorts of trouble. Well, a guy up here where we're at in near us, St. Augustine, Florida, decided, I want to make an event out of this. So he created the Florida Man Games, and he partnered with Hatchet Pro Wrestling recently, which is run by Sam Shaw, you know, better in WWE's Dexter Lumis. We've worked with them a lot. And they recently held tryouts for the Florida Man Games. So we're going to sit down with the organizer to talk to him about this. And before we get to it, I want to show you this clip. As you know, I do the news here in Jacksonville. We did a segment on the news about what the Florida Man Games is. Right after that, we'll get to the interview. So here it is. Let's get to it. The Florida Man has become an iconic title associated with some of the most unbelievable stories. So what did the Sunshine State do with the moniker?
Well, they turned it into an Olympic-style competition. News 4 Jax reporter Chris Will was in St. Augustine as judges looked for their next Florida Man royalty.
Chances are you have heard the stories.
Let's Florida!
Headlines that simply don't sound real.
This came together over a lot of beers, I can tell you that much.
The Florida Man Games are back to celebrate and compete in year 2. And held tryouts for the new talent and returning teams to see what's in store. When people are trying out here today, what are you looking for in a true Florida man?
We're looking for really as weird as it gets. We're not necessarily looking for the best athlete. Florida Man doesn't necessarily produce the best athletes, but we produce a lot of cool weirdos.
The makeshift combine was held at Hatchet Pro Wrestling, a place Sam Shaw and Brandon Bullock run to teach the next generation of entertainers. They see a lot of that in these Florida men and women.
He's like, hey, I'm starting this thing called the Florida Man Games. It's like, yeah, it just sounds cool. I don't even need to know what the events, what's happening. Like, I'm on board. Let's go.
Competitors got to try out some games inspired by real stories. So I had to get in on the action. This one inspired by a Florida man who threw a gator into a drive-through window. And yes, that actually happened.
So excited, man. There's just classic Florida legends that they've turned into games somehow. And I like to think I'm creative, but I got to give my hat off to Pete to think of these games and these complicated names for said games.
And in classic Florida man fashion, some of these competitors came from different parts of the state for today's combine and were tailgating hours before the event.
We got to do it. We had no choice. Like, we were a perfect group for it.
They're making a game about us. Come on, we got to go.
A wild competition, crazy enough to match the outrageous stories that come with the title of Florida Man. In St. Augustine, Chris Will, Channel 4, the local station.
Well, now we're joined by Pete Melfi with, I said it right, Melfi, right?
Yeah, you got it. Nailed it.
With Florida Man Games, which is taken off here. I think you have the title over your shoulder.
That's right.
Tell us what the Florida Man Games are.
The Florida Man Games is really Floridians' chance to live these Florida Man headlines without ending up in the back of a cruiser at the end of the day, right?
Because that's the reality of a lot of people in Florida.
That is the reality, and of all of these Florida Man
Dressed
stories.
a bit Florida Man right now.
I wake up like this,
You
Scott.
wake up like this?
I wake up like this. I haven't changed my clothes in a week, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So
the smell, I'm sorry about that.
I'll live with it. I'll live with it. I almost said something about a certain city, and I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. Let's get to it. Talk to me about how you got this idea for Florida Man Games.
Well, there were definitely a few beers involved in the concept planning of this idea. But, Scott, I've been doing news and podcasting and all these things for years, since like 2011. And so I've covered these Florida Man stories for a long time.
Like what?
Okay, I mean, the one everybody knows is the guy who throws the alligator through the Wendy's drive-through window, right?
No.
I mean,
oh my God.
You didn't know this one?
I didn't know that one.
Oh my goodness, guy just
I'm
pulls
learning
up.
things. Yeah.
Apparently, he's got a friend who works in Wendy's or something.
Okay.
So he pulls up to the drive-through window, and for some reason, because he's got a friend who works there, he decides it's a good idea to just throw an alligator, live alligator, through the drive-through window and let it run nuts in the Wendy's.
Oh my God.
So of course we took that, and we've got a section of our evading arrest obstacle course where you have to take your shot at throwing alligators through the drive-through window, and you got to knock over the cashier to move on through the course.
That's outstanding.
It's a lot of fun. We got a lot of room to have a lot of fun under the banner of Florida Man.
So when you do this and you announce we're doing Florida Man Games, do you get a bunch? Are we rednecks in Florida? I mean, what's the proper term?
We're a weird hybrid, aren't we?
We're not really
such
rednecks.
a melting pot.
People?
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe us as swamp people,
So when the swamp people, did they start coming out of the woodwork? Like, I want to be a part of this? This screams my ability, my skill set?
Absolutely. Scott, you should see some of the videos that we had submitted to us. I mean, guys riding around in actual tanks. We had guys slamming each other through tables, and not like the WWE tables, like PVC plastic tables.
Oh, God.
Tough tables.
Yeah.
And yeah, they definitely came out of the woodwork to show up and show out at this event. I mean, it's really, you get to be as Florida as you want to out here.
So talk to me about the event. You partnered with friends of our show. We've had them many times, Hatchet Pro Wrestling. Talk to me about that. They're in St. Augustine.
They're great. Yeah, we just did our combine out there at Hatchet Pro Wrestling, which was the perfect place to hold like a tryout for this competition. So they've been really, really cool to work with. And our combine consisted of our weaponized pool noodle, mud duel. We did it in the ring, so we didn't have the mud. But and then we had the Florida Sumo, which has been a great event.
What's Florida Sumo?
So at the event, this takes place in a caged octagon. This is a cage match. Yeah.
Okay.
And these guys put on the inflatable inner tubes, and they've got a pitcher of beer, right? And their goal is to knock the other one into the cage without spilling their pitcher of beer. And if they do end up losing, they can still chug the other guy's beer and put some points on the board. So it really shows off a few different skill sets.
When I think of NFL, NBA, Olympics, if someone's intoxicated, that is immediate disqualification, not allowed.
Right.
You maybe not as rigid on that rule here?
We serve beer in our team area.
Okay.
So the guys are almost encouraged to drink throughout the day before their event comes up. Yeah.
So what do people need? So how often do you do it?
Once a year for now.
Once a year.
Yeah.
So we just had it in the last month or so. So next fall is what we're looking at?
So it is, actually, we had our official event last February. This February, I guess, February of 2024.
Okay.
So our next event is going to be March 1st, our next
so
big
it's not
event.
that far off.
No, we're only a few months away.
Okay, so we're a wrestling talk show, so I'm just going to assume we may have some swamp people maybe watching right now.
Those are my people, by the way.
Yeah, but mine too. So if they wanted to get involved, what do they need to do?
Well, right now, we've pretty much got our team solidified, and that's kind of what the tryouts at Hatchet were all about. But if they send us a really weird, really wild video that's just impossible for us to turn down and turn away, they might have a chance. And I think I'm going to break this right here on your show, Scott. I'm really toying with the idea, and I'm leaning towards it, of picking a team straight out of the audience on the day of the event to compete. It's kind of like a wild card team.
Hang on, I want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, okay.
So if I show up with me and two morons,
yeah,
and we're in the audience, there's a possibility we could be picked.
Totally. Yes, absolutely. You may end up as the winning Florida Man Games team and take this belt home with you,
Talk to me about the belt. How did you get the belt made?
The belt is a beautiful red gator skin championship belt.
Wow. Nice.
I can't claim that I can afford for this to be real gold, but, it's a gold accented red gator skin belt. They're also going to get $5,000 cash.
$5,000 wow.
As
so
the
what's
winning
been the
team.
response? So, like, where are people coming from for this?
It's been huge, Scott. It's been amazing. We actually had attendees from all 50 states in the United States, plus New Zealand, Australia, Ireland. I mean, people came. It turned into a global event on its first year.
Florida Swamp people or the people who want to come make fun of Florida people?
The Florida Swamp people, for sure.
They do better.
They are totally equipped for this day. They're almost born equipped for this day. We had one guy who tried to bring in a dead possum, Scott.
Oh, my God.
One Florida man.
So, wait. I want to stop. I don't want to drill down on what you just told me. When he shows up with a dead possum, talk to me about that experience. You're the guy in charge. What did you have to do?
Yeah, well, I wasn't. I saw this on a video afterwards, but apparently him and his girlfriend were walking over, and he saw a dead possum on the side of the road and thought, you know what? This would be the perfect place to bring in a dead possum. Yeah. I'm thankful they actually didn't let him in, because that may have been a little bit of a health hazard. But it kind of made me, when he said he had a girlfriend in this video, I'm like, wait, I'm single, and this guy who picks up dead possums on the side of the road, he's got a girlfriend. He's bringing a girlfriend with him.
I think you are speaking for a lot of wrestling fans right now. I'm single, and this guy's got a girlfriend. A lot of wrestling fans have been there, are there right now.
There you go.
Last thing, if people want to know more, where do they go?
Easy, thefloridamangames.com, and check out all the socials as well. Instagram, X, all that stuff, at the Florida Man Games.
Thank you for joining us again on the show today. So we're going to be following the Florida Man Games in the months to come. Obviously, it hits our target demo, so to speak. But now I want to turn gears and talk about this guy right here, who I also wanted to bring on the show. You probably knew him better in WWE as Reggie. Goes now by Sidney Bateman. He's kind of on the indie circuit. Fascinating story. Was on SmackDown and NXT for a while, held the 24/7 title. But it's his start in life that I was stunned by. I've met a lot of guys who do different things to get into this industry. They were fighters, they were ball players, they did different types of things. He did something I'd never really met before. He was an acrobat, an actual acrobat, like in the circus. And that is how he found his way to pro wrestling. Fascinating story. Sidney Bateman, he's on the indies right now. You can see him all over the world, but you probably remember him from WWE as the character Reggie. Here he is. Well, we are here with Sidney, formerly known as Reggie, I guess, known as a lot of names. How you doing, sir? What's going on with your life right now?
I'm doing very well. Busy. Starting, adding a new member to my family.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Motivational speaking, acting, wrestling, a bunch of stuff.
Well, let's talk about the wrestling.
Okay.
So, when did it start for you? Was it kind of the teens before 2020, before WWE, or how did that all process start?
I was in Cirque du Soleil, and in 2019...
That's right, you were an acrobat.
I was an acrobat for 16 years. Circus for 16 years, saved my life. And I got to my dream job, Cirque du Soleil.
I want to stop. Why did you mean it saved your life?
I don't know if anyone knows my story, but I come from St. Louis. I was involved in gangs, drugs, violence. I lost my mom when I was 3.
Oh, really? Okay.
My uncle was shot and killed in my bedroom.
Oh, my God.
And I just followed into my other uncles and brothers' footsteps, gang member or drug dealer, until I found circus at the age of 11, and it steered me in a different direction.
So the circus life, you don't hear a lot about it as much anymore, but you found it.
I found the circus in St. Louis, saw Circus Harmony.
Okay.
Circus Harmony, I was doing that youth circus all the way up until high school, where I graduated and went to Circus College in Montreal.
There is a circus college.
Yeah.
I had never heard of that.
A feeder school for Cirque du Soleil.
Okay, so you do Cirque du Soleil, and you can pretty much do anything you're going to do in WWE, I'm assuming.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
That's why the transition was so easily able to switch for me, because of my acrobatic background.
So you eventually get to WWE. How did that happen? How did they get you, and how did they bring you in?
Well, Cirque du Soleil and NXT had an exchange. And it was an exchange where the circus performers would go to the NXT Performance Center and do a day as a wrestler. And the wrestlers would go to the Cirque du Soleil tent and do a day as a circus performer. And I knew from the beginning, I'm going to make this my next career. And I went in saying, I'm going to get a job, and that's exactly what I did.
So what was WWE like when you arrived?
It was new, but it was like circus school all over again. It was
like circus school.
It was me learning all of the basics all over again, but it was fun. I loved it. I trained my butt off, and I had a pretty good career.
Really?
Yeah.
24/7 champion. What was it like? That was the most chaotic title maybe we've ever seen.
Longest reigning, 112 days.
You were 112 days?
Yeah,
really?
And with the 24/7 title, that's pretty unheard of, because you win it, you lose it just like that. So that was
what were some of the unique title defenses you had during that tenure? Because that is one where they can get you at an Arby's, or they can get you at a rest stop, or wherever.
We had an interesting one in a park where I jumped over a car.
Okay.
R-Truth. Tozawa put on a dog costume, and I flipped over him as a dog. But some of some good ones were me and Dana in a restaurant on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
I took it from her when I left her with the bill. So she wanted to just be friends. I said, okay, great, let's be friends. And I pinned her 1, 2, 3, and also the waiter gave her the check afterwards.
What's the producing like of that when you guys are planning all that out? That's got to be fun.
It's wild. It's a bunch of fun. There was one time where we were shooting outside of a Ponderosa or one steakhouse or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was a trailer that was in the parking lot. And we shoot the shot with an ice cream truck. The ice cream truck runs away. A homeless guy, not a homeless guy, but the guy that comes out into the trailer runs out in his overalls with no shirt. Hey, come back. And we actually used that footage for the show.
Very cool. So where can people find you and keep track of you? Because I'm sure there's probably going to be stuff coming up for you.
My first match next Saturday, LA GCW. And a few more GCW dates. A show in Sanford on next Sunday. And Instagram at Scripts WWE, same as Twitter. So yeah, all over.
Reggie, Sydney, whatever they call you, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Just a footnote, so we interviewed that over the summer, so those matches have happened, but he's been doing a lot with GCW, a lot on the indie circuit, so go check out what he's up to next. I really appreciate Sydney or Reggie coming on with us. Of course, the Florida Man Games, such a fun event. Glad they could catch up with us. And Jake Hager, just one of the toughest guys to ever really put on a pair of wrestling boots. So glad we could have such a packed show today, and so glad you could join us. We will see you back here next time on Going Ringside.
This has been Going Ringside with The Local Station, brought to you every Wednesday on your favorite podcast player, on News4 Jax Plus, as well as the News4 Jax YouTube channel.